Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first Hearth Business Builder and Sales webcast. My name is Brandon Kamhai, and I'm our VP of Marketing. We're joined by Steve here, and we're going to kick it off in about 30 seconds. Everyone, please go ahead and log in, sign up, and we'll get going shortly. And we'll be able to see comments coming in as well as we answer questions. We've got 48 people here so far.
I see it. I got it on mine too. 48 viewers, 13 reactions, 2 comments.
Awesome. Yeah, Steve, go ahead and say hello to everyone. We're looking forward to getting started in about a minute here.
Hi, everybody. Can everybody hear me right now? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
You're good. You're good. All right, we're getting more and more viewers in here. We're getting excited to get started. We're up to 58. Awesome. We're going to go ahead and get started in just about 30 seconds here. Awesome. Here we go. All right. So, good morning, everyone. My name is Brandon Kamhai, and I'm the VP of Marketing here at Hearth. We have the privilege of being joined by Steve Weyl, who was the founder and owner of Able Roofing. He took his roofing company from 0 to over $100 million in revenue. And today, because you're a member of the Hearth community, Steve is going to show you some tips and tricks and his insights as to how he thinks about sales and growing your business. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Steve, and let's get started.
Beautiful. Thank you, Brandon. Hi, everybody. Hey, thanks for joining us today. You know, you might call this the pilot webcast for the Hearth Business Builder webcast series. So Hearth up to over 3,000 members right now. That's monumental. I think you guys are starting a revolution in financing, and you guys keep growing. So you'd think today was about financing. No, we're not going to talk a lot about financing, but financing it'll come into the picture. It's really about selling and selling more and building your business and the things that you can do to build your business. So let's talk about the agenda for today. It's around 2 o'clock now. Hard stop 3 o'clock. We won't go past 3 o'clock. Last 10 minutes, I'll entertain questions. So anything along the way, if you want a question, just throw it out there. My guess is we won't get to all the questions, but we'll get to a few of them. At the end of the webcast today, we're going to send you a survey. It's a pretty simple survey. It's basically yes or no. Yes, yeah, I want to attend the next one. Put me down. No, not interested. And you know what? I'm good either way. You know, you got to like it, and we'll move on. Either or, right? So that's perfectly fine. As well, we're going to have topics in there. And such topics as, okay, how about perfecting the 1-call close, the sales accountability, the 2-call close. How about multifamily sales? I don't know how many of you guys are doing it. It was a big lucrative part of my business. Creating urgency to buy, hiring right, compensation plans, storm selling. You know, the landscape has changed for some time now. Storms are a big part of the business. Creating a business plan, creating a budget, budgeting or planning for growth, a call center, best practices, a roofer's demo. All these things will be in future webcast series or can be, but you need to mark down and tell us what are you most interested in. But first and foremost, it's going to be growing your business, and it's going to be what I'd call sales-centric type of training. So as Brandon said, my name is Steve Weyl. I'll give you a little background on me. So you might ask, what gives me the right to come up here and profess? Okay. Well, let's see here. Well, I became a millionaire at the age of 30, and that happened through roofing because I became a roofer. Well, before a roofer, I was a chimney sweep. So I'm 59. About 30 years ago, I became a chimney sweep. And long story short, I became a roofer. And in my first 10 years, I got my company to about $10 million. So not bad for a local, one location roofing company. And what I realized was that that we did have a selling process and a selling system. We called it the SOP selling system. I'm not sure if you know what that is, but SOP stands for seat of pants, because I got to tell you, we were selling by the seat of our pants. We were hiring people with people skills to sell. Here's the problem with hiring people with people skills. Our competition, they were hiring people with people skills too. So we were getting our fair share of the business. Let me talk about fair share of the business. Our close rate, my first 10 years, was somewhere between 25 and 33%. And I don't know if that sounds familiar, but you know, you ask somebody, how many estimates are you supposed to get when you get a roof or a remodeling job or landscaping, etc.? The number 3 will probably come in there somewhere, and people feel they need to get 3 quotes. I don't know where that came from. I know the BBB would tell you that, right? So we were getting our fair share. If somebody got 3 quotes, we got our fair share. We'd get we'd be one of those 3, and the next one, the other guy would get it. The next one, the other guy would get it, and then we'd be in line for our. That's 33%. If they got 4 quotes, then of course, what, 25% close rate. Well, we were getting our fair share, but I realized somewhere along the way, we could get our unfair share. And how do you do that? Well, in 1998, I was in a workshop, you know, not too dissimilar from the one that you're going to view today. And I met this sales trainer. Now, he was a Sandler sales trainer. I'm a Sandler sales trainer. Sandler is a selling process. It's a repeatable, it's trainable, proven successful sales process. And that's the process that I learned. And then we kind of customized it to our business, especially the residential end of our business, tweaked it a little bit. But that's the fundamental, that's the foundation of what I teach today. So anyway, so we brought this trainer in, and that was in 1998. 10 years later, my company's doing $105 million with 19 locations. And you ask, well, how did that happen? I would tell you that, I'd like to tell you it's all Sandler, not all. You know, we did a lot of right things, but the biggest thing, we brought in sales process, the way we looked at sales, the way we dealt with sales, the way we managed sales. We really changed everything about it. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So I sold my company, which was wonderful, right? One of the best days of my life. So now I'm a full-time Sandler sales trainer, and I train here in Columbus, Ohio. But I train nationally for companies. We do a lot of digital training, et cetera. And you can see, I'm actually in Columbus, Ohio. Here's our training center. We train business leaders. We train salespeople, sales leaders, et cetera. So give you a glance of what this room looks like. So I sold my company. So now I'm what you would call a sales-centric business coach. People hire me to train their salespeople, but they also hire me to work with their sales managers. I deal with a lot of business owners on strategy, business planning, really how to properly grow your business with some control, right? So, interestingly enough, now that I'm a sales trainer full-time, most companies come to me and they tell me, hey, we're closing somewhere around 25%, maybe 30%. And that's very interesting. What we found was you can actually close at 40 to 50%. Now, you might say, well, that's low, or you might say that's really high. So let's look at the different kinds of leads. A referral. If somebody refers you, a neighbor or a relative refers you to somebody, I believe that should be an 80% close rate. But if this is what we call a marketed lead, an internet lead, something where they're getting multiple estimates and you're closing between 40 to 50%, we'll put it this way. If you're competing with other companies and you're closing at 40, 50%, you could log off now, because that's a pretty good close rate. But if you're not closing between 40 and 50%, this webcast, it might be for you. So today we're going to talk about buyer behavior. We are going to talk about typical selling behavior. We're going to talk about the dysfunction between the two. We're going to talk about the 4 acceptable outcomes to every sales interaction. We're also going to talk about a 50,000-foot view of what the sales process I teach. Now, we're not going to go too much into detail, but it's the same process that took my company from 10 million to 105 million. So you might get a few nuggets from that. And then finally, I'm going to teach you guys a technique today that is called reversing. And that's something that'll be a takeaway. That'll be a nugget today, because I got to give you one technique, right? But there's dozens of techniques that we use to actually close more business. So before we get too deep in, I'd like to share some of my beliefs around selling and business. Starting out with, if what you are doing today is working for you, don't change. Okay, I'm not here to say, oh, what you're doing is wrong. It may be exactly what you should be doing. Now, if you can add a few more clubs to that golf bag, one more club, two more clubs, just to up your game a little bit, then this might be for you. If you don't have a sales process and you're kind of winging it, like I had done earlier in my career with the SOP, seat of pants selling process, then what you're going to hear today, it might be right up your alley and you might take it to heart. So let's talk about some of the things that, quote unquote, I believe. Number one, if you want to make more money, shorten your sales cycle. As salespeople, man, we lengthen the sales cycle unnecessarily. When somebody says, hey, give me a call in the next couple of weeks, not acceptable, because that's going to lengthen the sales call. I can't be more committed than that person. That should result in a time and a date and something on the calendar. Want to make more money? Shorten your sales cycle. Let's talk about equal business stature. Now, I believe as a salesperson, I have rights. I have rights as a salesperson. And I believe that I am not what we'd call the subservient bidder. I believe that I am on equal footing with that client or with that prospect. I believe, in fact, if what I'm bringing integrity. I'm bringing good intentions. I'm bringing good warranty. And I believe that I bring something of value, and I'm not begging for the business. And I believe that I'm on equal terms with that buyer. And that has to begin, that equal business stature, that has to begin very, very early in the process. Because if they look at me like the subservient, quote unquote, bidder, they're going to treat me like that. It won't work out so well for me. So what I have to do is I got to create that equal business stature. Number three, people buy for their reasons, not mine. So when I come in to a sales situation, should be blank slate. I shouldn't have preconceived notions. I should be curious. I should get rid of my crystal balls and all my mind reading. And what I got to do is I got to ask the questions, right? I got to understand what's going on. And again, I got to assess the situations. Every situation is different. People buy for their reasons, not mine. Number four, emailing prices and proposals. You know, I guarantee many of you are emailing prices. You want to sell more? Stop emailing prices and proposals, okay? Because all you're doing is bringing it to a number. So if you just stopped emailing prices and started selling, that would be a game changer. Now, of course, you have to have a process for that. So my belief is emailing prices, you're not doing yourself any justice. And I will also add, you're not doing the buyer justice as well. Number five, you must give people a reason to buy today or they won't. As we know, human beings, we're all procrastinators. I'm a procrastinator. I put stuff off to the last minute. I have to give people a reason to buy today. Now, if you looked at the videos that Hearth had sent out, you're going to see some reasons to buy today, but there's a lot of difference. And there's a thing called pain, and that pain is where we uncover pain and we create pain. And that is a technique that is in the toolbox of every professional salesperson. It must be. That makes selling a lot easier. We're going to go into that a little bit later today. Okay, number six, there are no bad prospects, only bad salespeople. How many times do I hear a salesperson blame the buyer for them not selling a job? They might say something like, well, that guy wasn't serious anyways. He's just a tire kicker. No, They either qualify or they don't qualify. If they don't qualify, hey, no big deal. You know, some people will, some people won't. Who cares? Move on. Go to the next one. Spend time with the people who will buy from you. Now, it's not that simple. I understand that. But there are no bad prospects, only bad salespeople. They either qualify or they don't. Don't make excuses. Next, selling should be open and honest, and it's really a conversation. In fact, selling is just a structured conversation between people. Now, fortunately, we know what the structure is, right? And we have to stay within that structure, but selling should be open and honest. And in fact, we have a saying in my world, if you feel it, say it. So if I don't think somebody is interested, I'll stop, say time out. My gut tells me you're probably not buying into kind of what I'm talking about here, and maybe you don't have too much of an interest. Am I sensing that correctly? If I feel it, I'm going to lay it out there in a very nice way. You'd be surprised what kind of answers you get from that and how that kind of turns tables in selling. And it's open and honest, and you want to build trust. It's one good way to build trust. Number one, you have to have financing, meaning you have to have some financing options in your pocket. Now, I know on this webcast, I think the percentages, about 60% of the viewers are roofers. I think the rest, we have HVAC, we have remodelers, landscapers. I saw some, I think, skylights and specialty window contractors, of course, right? So we have a lot of different contractors viewing, but we have a lot of roofers. But we have to have financing. There's a lot of people, they have money anxiety. They don't want to let go of their money. That's a reason that you need financing. Some people just can't afford that new project but want it. There's a lot of reasons to have that financing. Now, most of you on this call, I believe, are already hooked up with Hearth. What a great tool. I mean, you're going to get offers from 12 different lenders. I didn't have that in my day. We had one, maybe two, and the problem is when they turned us down, we turned the people down. Now with Hearth, you've got a lot of options, and people are quote unquote, they're fighting for your business. Your chances of getting something financed are much better. Now, some of you might say, well, wait a second, you know, some of these rates are like crazy high. Yeah, and there's a reason why, right? Because they have lousy credit. And I will tell you, those people with lousy credit, they know how high that interest rate is going to be, and they will accept it because they have lousy credit. And there's a reason they have lousy credit, and they pay interest. They pay that high interest rate. So again, people buy for their reasons, not yours. So you have to have a good financing outlet. You have to have a sales system and process. How do you know if you're on track or off track? So when you do it right, you should be able to end that sales call, get in your truck, and in 2 minutes go through a checklist. And that's what my clients do. We go through a little self debrief, because the sales managers or yourself to debrief yourself. Well, sales manager can't debrief everything, so we debrief ourselves, right? Many of us don't have sales managers. So this little self debrief tells us exactly what we did wrong in a sales call, not to repeat that same mistake. So you have to have a sales system, a process to follow, because that's what keeps you on track. Okay, almost last. Sell today, educate tomorrow. Your job as a salesperson is not to educate your buyers. It's to sell your buyers. You can educate them later. In fact, in some cases, they can find out exactly what they bought later, but your job is to sell today. You can educate them later, okay? Many times, it's the other way around. We, as salespeople, sometimes we feel that we have to educate the buyer. No, you have to understand the buyer. Okay, so, and then lastly, reversing. It's a necessity. I'm going to go into that. So here, I'm going to test you guys. I'm going to test you guys right now. So you ever have a customer say to you, hey, can you provide me with a couple references? So here's your test. I'm the customer. You're the salesperson in the home. You're at the end of the sales call, and you've given them the cookie, which is what? The price. And they go, hey, George, you know, it looks great. Hey, you know, before I decide here, can you provide me with a couple references? What I want you to do is, I'm going to take, I don't know, 10 seconds. And I want to hear what your response to that would be. So I'm going to shut up for 10 seconds. And when the customer says or the prospect says, hey, can you provide me a couple of references? I want to hear what your response would be. Okay, now I'm going to guess what your response would be. Be glad to. That's probably what's going to happen, right? Here's the problem. Okay, here's another belief: time kills deals. And then you're going to go figure out which those references, or they're going to have to call those references, and all of a sudden, what happens? Things get extended. You remember the first rule: if you want to make more money, shorten your sales cycle. Now your sales cycle just got longer, right? And now the door opened for that customer or that prospect, that is, to who knows what's going to happen, who knows who's going to say what. So we have a technique that's called reversing. Reversing is simply answering a question with a question. Answering a question with a question. And as good salespeople, we need to be answering questions with questions. So when somebody says, can you provide me with a couple references, the first thing I want you to think of, and I don't care what they ask you in a sales call, I want you to think, why are they asking me that? Or why are you telling me that? And then I want you to respond. So my first question would be, can you provide me with a couple references? Why would even a buyer ask for those references? Okay, here's some reasons. Maybe they don't trust you. Maybe they're ready to buy, but they feel that they just not quite there. Maybe they just want to get rid of you because it's easier to say, can you provide me some references versus I have no interest whatsoever. It could be some kind of a stall tactic. It could be that, you know, somewhere along the way they read something, and I guess you're supposed to get references at this point because they don't know exactly how to buy. Who knows why they're asking that question, right? But your job is to find out why, or to ask a question. So we have reversing, answering a question with a question. Now, what I could ask, why do you need references? I don't know. That might be a little bit of a put off. So the technique reversing, always asking a question with a question, I'm going to combine it with another technique of bringing the future into the present. So how I would train you to answer that question would be, can you provide me with a couple references? First thing I'd say, of course I can. That's fine. Then I would say, can I ask you a question? And that is that, can I ask you a question? That is the technique that you simply want to put into your selling game. Take that away. Can I ask you a question? Now you get two things out of that. A, they've already agreed to give you an answer, right? So you know you're going to get an answer, and they've agreed to answer the question. That's a twofer right there. And you would simply ask, let me ask you a question. Once I give you these references, and let's suppose they say really good things about me, what happens next? Now we're bringing the future into the present. Now, only one or two things are going to happen, right? So if they say, well, then at that point we would buy from you, beautiful. Now, the next question would be, well, do you want the good references, the bad references? They're going to laugh. You're going to laugh. I said, of course, any reference that we give you would be good references. Now, you might have an A plus BBB. That might just do it and say, folks, you know we're going to give you great references. You told me if they check out, you're going to buy from us. Can we just move forward and get this thing done? Now, that's probably the move because I want to shorten that sales cycle. But what if they said, after I said, what would happen next after you get those great references? They go, well, then we'd have to think about it. Now, don't you think you should deal with that? I have to think about it right then and there, because it sounds like to me, you've got great references. Sounds like that would be a stall at that point. And then, of course, I can deal with that. Now, how would I deal with that? We got 99 ways to deal with that. But one would be, hey, folks, that wouldn't be a problem. Let me ask you this. It sounds like regardless of what's going to happen, you're going to need to think about. Help me understand some of the things that are swirling around in your head. Now, there are 99 actually different ways we can deal with that, but let's move on. So let's talk a little bit about buyer behavior and seller behavior. Now, you might have seen this on one of the videos, but this is worth repeating. So let's talk a little bit about our buyers, and you've seen this before. So I'm hoping you can see my board. And if you can't, I'll just go ahead and explain it. So this is the buyers. buying system, and you know that the buyers have a buying system, right? And it's a 4-step process. So salespeople, and if you heard the video, you're going to hear this again. I was watching Steve Harvey on the Family Feud, and they said professions where you'd expect them to lie, and salesperson was number 2. Okay, lawyers and politicians kind of surrounded that as well. So homeowners, they have to protect themselves from who? Well, not us, but they got to protect themselves from the pushy salesperson, right? So they can't open up. They've got to put the wall up. So they just can't tell you all their frustrations and all the problems and everything that's going on. So it's okay to lie to a salesperson, right? And they don't lie to a salesperson because they're bad people. They lie to a salesperson because they have to protect themselves. Now, after they give us a little lie and said, hey, I'm just getting my estimates at this point, we're not sure that we're even going to really do this, which is probably just another lie, right? They would sell us, hey, we're just in our information gathering stage. And at that point, what do we do as salespeople? We give them a lot of information, right? And how much do we charge for that? We don't charge anything for that. Now, do we know where that price goes and how they shop that and what they do with that price? We don't know. So sometimes it feels like they steal from us, right? They steal our time, our expertise. They steal our information. But you know, it's really hard to call it stealing when we're kind of an accomplice to that crime. And then number 3, after I give you everything on a silver platter and options and samples, et cetera, they give me some kind of stall. It sounds like, hey, let me think about it. Or I got to check my finances. Or I got to check with my financial guy. Or I got to check with the bank, okay, which we can take that away from them, right, because we are the bank as well. Or they give us any number of excuses or stalls. And in many cases, isn't that just another potential lie? So at the end, I hear something like, hey, you know what? Let me think about it. Looks great. Now, don't they always leave us positive, though? They always leave us positive. Say, hey, great presentation. I really liked. Thank you. Great suggestions. I really enjoyed the time we spent together. You really know your stuff. And they always leave us positive. Why? Well, it's a lot easier than telling us no thank you, right? And they don't want who wants all that pressure? So at that point, they say, great job. We'll get back to you. We're really interested. I go back to the office and I tell everybody else, hey, I think I got a live one right here. And as salespeople, that's like a drug. And that drug we call hopium, because salespeople, they are addicted to hopium. And then number 4, well, when they say call me in the next week, or I'll call you in the next week, I don't hear from them. So what do? I call them back. And that's where I find that they hide from me. Now, I don't know about you, but do you have any prospects in hiding? My guess that you do. So let's take a look at traditional selling. Now, this is what I did for the first 10 years of my life. So number 1, we did a needs analysis. That needs analysis included maybe when do you want to do the job, right? When do you want to do it? Quantity, types of shingles, what areas, maybe colors, all that kind of stuff. Here's the problem with needs. Your competition, they're getting needs as well. And you guys are starting to sell all the similar stuff because all the needs are about the same. We got to go much deeper than needs. They got to look at you differently. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So after I have your needs, then here comes the solution to your needs. And that's when we do a presentation. Now, that presentation could look like a lot of different things, right? That presentation could be the bid. It could be the email. Hopefully not, right? We can change that. It could be the dog and pony show. It could be the demo. It could be my PowerPoint presentation. It could be the pitch book. It could be the sales deck. It could be just a whole lot of things. But at that point, they're going to get the quote unquote cookie, which means they're going to get the price. And somewhere along the way, I'm going to suggest, or they're going to ask, why should I do business with you? Or you'll say, here's why you should maybe do business with me. And you're going to come and you're going to go, you're going to talk about your experience, and you're going to talk about your A+ BBB, and you're going to talk about your integrity, and you might even talking about your years in business, right? And you might talk that you're certified. You guys get that, right? Might be in your present materials today. Well, good news, bad news. Bad news, you get fired. Good news, you get hired by your biggest competitor, and you're with that same homeowner. And they go, why should I use you? Or here's why you maybe should use us. We got experience, and we have integrity, and we have this many years of experience, and we've got certification prices. You guys are saying the same crap to the same people. And at that point, that's when you're going to start looking like a salesperson. So I was taught, after I do my needs analysis and my presentation, that's where I have to what? Close business, right? So, and I learned the closes. You guys, you've seen the book of 142 closes. Do you think they work? I don't know. I don't know if they work or not, okay? One close was the ascending close. That's Encyclopedia Britannica. You string 5 yeses together in a row with questions. You slide that proposal over and say, you ready to get moving? And somehow they magically say yes. Didn't work for me, okay? You've got the price goes up Monday close. You know, that's the impending event close. You've got, you know, the be grateful close. Hey, be grateful, folks, that you could even afford this. How about the the disease close? The disease close. Hey, folks, you know, this isn't like some disease. It's not going to kill you. Go ahead and sign here and here and here. Could you guys imagine doing that in a home? I couldn't. And do I think those things work? Well, I don't know. I don't think I'd try those things because I'm not so comfortable with that type of selling. And then lastly, you guys know the Nike close, right? Just do it. So somewhere I was taught to overcome stalls and objection. And what's the number one stall and objection? I want to think about it. And I was taught in the books to say, what do you want to think about? Or why do you need to think about it? And they go, well, Steve, you know, it's a lot of money. And then I was taught to say, so when you say it's a lot of money compared to the quality of the goods and services that we're delivering, or a lot of money compared to your budget. And they say, hey, Steve, time out. Can you just give me a few days to think about it? And guys, at that point, that's where the arm wrestle begins. And all this goodwill could go down the tubes at this point, right then and there. So what do you have to do as a salesperson? You got to back up. You got to relent. You got to fall back. At that point, you're on defense, and it's like, whoa. So that comes to our last thing. I backed up, and now I got to quote unquote what? I got to follow up. Like every good salesperson, right? But when I see follow up, only two letters stand out to me. The F and the U, right? Because when I follow up, I'm going to get your voicemail. And your voicemail is going to say, your call is very important to me. And I leave my name and my number. Day 1 goes by. Day 2 goes by. I don't hear from you. I got to call back because I'm persistent as a salesperson. We were trained to be that way, right? Day 1, day 2 goes by. I don't hear from you. Now, it starts getting uncomfortable for me. Maybe for you too. And follow up now turns into stalking. But the problem is I have to stalk you. Why? Because you're hiding from me. And you're hiding from me because maybe I tried to close you. And when I tried to close you, you gave me some kind of maybe it's a little bit of a lie. And when I did my presentation, now it feels like you kind of stole from me. I did my needs analysis. I'm not sure what was real. Now, does this look familiar? And why do salespeople continue to play this game? I played this game for a whole lot of years. Well, there's good news, bad news. Can you make a living doing this? You might get your fair share at best, right? But if you really want to come up and grow your business, you got to change it up. You got to do something different. So let's talk about what something different looks like. So let's talk about the 4 outcomes of the sale. And there's really only 4 outcomes of a sale. When I say of a sale, I'm talking about a sales interaction. And I don't care if it's a 1-call close or a 2-call close, which we'll talk about here in a second. So number 1, best thing that can happen. You get a yes, right? We'll take a yes. Number 2, No. Guys, let's get enamored with the no. By the way, my license plate on my car says go for no. You got to be comfortable with no. If you're not, you're going to be holding on to a lot of hopium, and you're going to be wasting a lot of time, and you're going to extend your sales cycle. Now, no, we don't want rejection. We want the truth. That's why no is okay. Why do the best salespeople get more no's than anyone else, than the average salesperson? You might think, well, because they work harder and they see more people. No, because they get decisions of yes or no. And the best salespeople let people know it's okay to tell me no. You've got to be comfortable with no. In fact, when I go into a sales call, I establish a fact, folks, we're not right for everyone. I get that, okay? There's got to be a good fit here. Do you think that you'd be comfortable enough to tell me if you don't think there's a good fit, maybe you'd be comfortable enough to tell me no thanks, and we can put it in the no column? And I'm comfortable with that if you are. And on the flip side, if it's not no, then it sounds like we have something to talk about, and that's when we're going to dive in. And that's part of my sales process. Number 3, we call it a clear future. And that clear and definite future is typically a time, a date, and a reason for another meeting. And that is a time, date, reason for another meeting. And if I can't get that time and date for the next meeting or phone call, etc., I'm prepared to take it to a no thanks, because I can't be more committed than that buyer. And then number 4, I don't love this, but you know what? It pays money. It's called a lesson learned. Underline the word learned, because if I walk away, get a yes, a no, clear future, and don't get a yes, no, clear future, and get a, I don't know, maybe get a hold in the next few weeks, I better figure out what I did wrong to get that. That might be my lesson learned, so I don't repeat that mistake. Now, simple enough, right? Yeah, this is simple. It's kind of like breaking rocks. Breaking rocks is simple. Easy, not easy, but simple. You need a delivery system for that. So let's talk about the delivery system for this. And we're going to talk about the sales process, sales system that took my company from that $10 million to $105 million. But first, let's talk about that 1-call, 2-call close. Now, I can't tell you what's right for you. I'm kind of a 1-call close salesperson, but I also realize in some cases, there is no way that I can close this deal on a 1-call close because, quote unquote, decision isn't there. So if the appointment is not set up correctly and I have one party, for instance, wife, no husband, husband, no wife, significant other, you kind of get that, right? That is an objection or stall that you cannot overcome. You cannot deal with that if decision's there. It's a very difficult one to combat. And you guys know what I'm talking about. So a 2-call close in some situations might be necessary. However, I deal with some companies. I have an HVAC company that I deal with, and here's their statistics. On their 1-call close, we've got them up to a 61% close rate. And by the way, they're the most expensive heating and cooling company in my town, and they're the largest in the Midwest. Here's the problem. If they don't close it on a 1-call, and they're at 61% average, if they don't close it on a 1-call, and it's a feedback where they leave a price, 5% comes in. And the reason being, people, they see a difference in price, the emotion's gone, and the sale goes with it at that point. So they have to 1-call close, and they do it very, very effectively. So 1-call close, 2-call close is something we can certainly talk about in the future, and I can argue it both ways. Now, your call center might have to assist you on that as well, and as far as setting that up, because there's a right way to set that up and a wrong way to set that up. So let's talk about a 7-step system. So step number 1, 2, and 3, there's really 3 compartments, and then it breaks down to about 7. So number 1, we're going to establish relationship. You guys kind of get that. We'll go into that a little bit deeper. Number 2, this is where we qualify or disqualify. But typically, this is where we're going to qualify the opportunity. And there's 3 compartments within that qualifying. There's 2 in establishing the relationship. And then there's 2 more to the 7-step system. And the last, and that's where we're going to actually close the business. Now, interestingly enough, you're going to look at this and you're going to say, well, this is where the closing is. And I'm going to tell you, no, we're actually closing here, we're closing here, and we're closing here, because if you wait to here to close business, it puts too much pressure on you and it puts too much pressure on your buyer. So part of the system is we're closing along the way with little closes, and at the end, closing gets very, very easy. Now, interestingly enough, we're not a big proponent. We're heavy on qualification. We're a little light on presentation. With that closing and all those little closes along the way, typically there's not a lot of quote unquote asking for the business in our world. It's almost a surrender the business. So let's take a closer look at this. And this is a 50,000 foot view, and I wouldn't expect you to quite understand it right away. So step number one, we have to have some bonding and rapport. Now you might ask, well, bonding and rapport, that's easy. I just look at some pictures and see a bike in the yard and talk about kids, etc. Guys, if you're doing that today, perfect, continue to do that. But really, this is a better understanding of people. So let's talk about a better understanding of people and what that looks like. So people, there's 4 different behavioral styles, and I have to understand my behavioral style, and then I have to understand the behavioral style of my buyers. So the 4 buyers' behavioral styles, first of all, we have the D. And the D, that stands for dominance. They like to be in charge. They like to call the shots. They're large and in charge, and they're a little more brash or a little more blunt with you. They tell you like it is. They look at their watch a lot. They're always in a hurry, right? You come in, they say, hey, this is what I thought we would talk about. Go ahead and have a seat here. They're already taking control of the sales process. Then you have the I, and the I stands for influence. We also call them the socializers. You know, hey, how long you've worked for XYZ company? Hey, do you know so-and-so? They're the chatty Cathys. You know those people, right? They stick out like a sore thumb, and they just love to talk and socialize. Then you have the S's, and the S stands for steady relator, because they're all about relationships and people and feelings, and they're the softer touch, and they're going to let you lead and let you be in charge. And then lastly, we have the C, and the C stands for compliance, and those people are analytical. They're compliant to rules, regulations, process. This is how they do things. And what I have to understand what kind of buyer do I have in front of me, and I have to adapt my behavior to that buyer. But I also have to understand what kind of person I am. So if I'm that really assertive, direct person with a big personality and a socializer, you know what? I might scare that analytical, dry person who's done their internet research, right? Because they might say, wow, this guy's way too much for me. So I may have to soften it up a little bit. And I might just have to go a little quiet. I might even have to lower my voice a little bit, okay? Might have to change my body language a little bit. And I'll just make some subtle changes just because I'm going to make it a better bonding and rapport experience with that buyer. So I look at these different D, I, S, and C's, and I understand for the D, I can be a little bit more direct. With the I got to leave some time for some chit-chat. With this S person, I got to build the trust and spend more time building that trust with that salesperson. And then lastly, the C is details. I got to get into the details and the specifications and the gauges and everything that's available. And this is that person that's going to come with a list to a sales call and all the things they want to talk about. So once I understand all these behavioral styles and understand my behavioral style, I'll know how I reflect with that person. So that's where I start with bonding rapport. Now, step number 2, this is where we're going to set an upfront contract. And that's going to be an agreement between me and the buyer on how we're going to do business. I'm kind of setting the ground rules to see what is expected from a lot of different perspectives. So let's talk about that. So in my upfront contract, the things that I'm going to talk about. Number one, time. Okay, if I have an hour set, and I don't know how much time you need for a sales appointment, I like 90 minutes. If I'm going to close, I like 90 minutes. I'll take 2 hours. I can close in an hour, right, if you have to. Anything less can be done. It's more difficult. So I might say something along the lines of, so Mr. and Mrs. Jones, are you guys still good till 3 o'clock? Check. Good to go. Now I know there won't be any interruptions, because what could happen? I get into my presentation, I start talking about things, and all of a sudden Mrs. Jones has to pick up the kids, and where am I? Nowhere, right? And I've basically, spilled all my candy all over the lobby, right? Okay, buyer's agenda. Now this is really crucial. I'm going to ask the Jones. So Mrs. Jones, before we get started, or Mr. Jones, before we get too deep in here, help me understand some of the things that we need to be talking about today. And they're going to start telling me some things they need to be talking about today. And those are some of those quote unquote potential pain points. Now I'm starting to get some intel. This is crucial. If you just did this, in a sales call, this next step, you'd be light years ahead. You'll be asking them, well, folks, ultimately, what would you like to accomplish today? Did you hear that? Ultimately, what would you like to accomplish today? Because you know what they might say? They may say exactly what you want them to say. What would you want them to say? Well, if we can come together on a price, etc., then we'd like to get moving. Well, selling will get very easy for you. But if we're not asking what their expectation for the end, that's a problem. Remember, we talked earlier about bringing the present bringing the future into the present. That's how we bring the future into the present. That's crucial. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about my agenda, what's going to happen today, information I'm going to need from them. We're going to talk about the outcome, and we're going to talk about what no means, what yes means, what a clear future would be. That's something we'll definitely talk about later, but we're also going to talk about budget right there. And that's where we're going to talk about real quick, folks. You know, half of my customers write a check. The other half, they take it to payments. Just before we get too deep in, maybe help me understand where you guys are coming from on this, because that's what I want to know up front. Are they a payment buyer or a cash buyer? Because if they're a payment buyer, part of my process is, well, we got to get you approved first. Now, if I know how much they're approved for, selling could get really easy for me as well there. But I'm going to talk about money early in the conversation. We have to talk about money early before we give them the price. Otherwise, they could have sticker shock, which should scare them away. They should know what kind of expectations. They should know what to expect, and we should know what to expect. I might talk about decision right then and there as well. And folks, or it could be an individual person who besides yourself might be involved in this decision. Or I might say, who besides yourself wouldn't be interested in colors, samples, specifications, samples, etc. Warranties. I have to find that out early in that sales call, because I could get too far down the road and find out this person can't make a decision, and I could give them everything. And then, of course, what? Time kills deals, and then my sales cycle is extended. Now, another thing that I might do, which we won't talk about now, is I might set the expectation that I'm coming back, but I may not be coming back. Meaning I might need to get permission that I am coming back and permission to come back, but I may not have to come back. And that's an interesting technique and a very effective technique that we might need to put into our selling game. Okay, so let's keep moving here. The next piece will be pain. Now, I got my upfront contract, bonding rapport. Now I'm going to qualify. And this is pain. And now I have to understand the emotional triggers for doing business. Now, if they say, hey, we need to get a roof, how soon do you want to get it done? Well, we need to get it done in the next 3 weeks. What am I going to do? Well, a typical salesperson would say what? Sure, we can probably work in that schedule. The professional's going to say, well, 3 weeks. Why 3 weeks? I go, well, we got a graduation coming up. Tell me more. Well, my daughter's graduating and I want the house to look good. Okay, so what happens if you don't get it done in 3 weeks? So, well, that's going to be a problem. I don't understand. Now I'm going to get it down to where they're getting a little itchy and thinking, oh no, I better make a decision quicker. Now I'm starting to take it a little bit on the emotional side. Now I'm not going to go deep into pain, but that is part of my questioning strategy to understand how I take it from intellectual all the way down to feeling. And I have to understand what the buyer's pains are, not what their need is. We know they need a roof, but we got to find out what the impact of how that's impacting their life, how they feel about it, what other damage this is causing, all these things around maybe not doing this project that could go wrong, the pains that could cause them. That's how I am qualifying for pain. Now up here, I also qualified for budget, and I also qualified for decision, because I know that I have to get in front of decision makers, and I also qualified that you can afford what I do. Okay, then finally, there's going to be a demo, and that's going to be the demonstration. Now, the demonstration is also where I'm going to close business. That's where I'm going to do a presentation. And the demonstration, I got to tell you, if you don't have a demo today, I'm going to direct it right to the roofers. You need to have a demo. Okay, landscapers, you need to have a demo. Window guys, remodelers, you need to have a demo. Now, in the roofing business, we would demo caulking, we would demo metal, we would be demoing fasteners, underlayment. We demoed everything. And that, when we demoed, we actually found a way to create the pain through the demo, the things that could happen, the differentiations. And that was a real important part of our selling. And that was part of the close. And then finally, we have to have what is called the post-sell. In the post-sell piece, let's make sure what is real, that there is no buyer's remorse, because sometimes people wake up the next day and or that night, and they go, oh boy, what did I just do? Maybe I should get some more quotes, etc. So we got to peg down to make sure that that buyer is completely comfortable with that sale, because in most states, as I know, there's 3 days to cancel. I got to make sure that they're comfortable with that sale, will refer me, and they won't go anywhere. In fact, in that post-sale, that's where I'm going to get a referral, because the best time to get a referral, in my opinion, is at the moment that somebody buys, because that might be the happiest time they'll ever have. Because, you know, if you're, especially in the roofing, remodeling, you know, it's a lot of noise, it's a lot of dirt and dust, and they're not always loving the situation. The time that they actually ink the deal, that'd be the best time to get a referral. In fact, some people, crazy enough, psychology, they might even be thinking, well, if I made a mistake, I want somebody else to make a mistake, and they'll give you that referral. I know that's crazy thinking, right? Okay, guys, so at this point, it's time to answer a few questions. I'm seeing here that we've got quite a few questions here. So let me see here. Okay, so I got one that's suggestions for sales training, or what do you do? How do you train? How do you do training? Okay, so I see a couple of those around training. So what I do with my group, we deliver training in three different ways. Number one, sometimes people come here for a 2-day boot camp. It's easy to get here. It's a 2-day boot camp. After that, there's continued coaching. And then we do a lot of video conferencing coaching. It's very effective and it's affordable. A third way, there are Sandler trainers across the globe, actually, across the country. And we can help you get into a local office for instance, a 2-day boot camp. And then the coaching as far as how you apply Sandler to the residential selling world or commercial, that's where we come in. So if you have any questions, you can make a comment on your survey sheet. If you want, you could jot down my email address. If you have an interest in that, let me give you my email address right now. It's steve.weyl, W-E-Y-L, at sandler.com. That's steve.weyl at sandler.com. I'll certainly answer your emails as well, okay? Let's see, what else do we have here? Here's one, deposits. What's the right amount of deposit? That's a good question, you know? It's interesting, I was talking to somebody the other day, and they thought a big selling point was, hey, folks, we don't require a deposit. And for the life of me, I can't figure out why that would be a selling point, other than it's going to kill your cash flow. Because if you're selling that you don't have to, if that's a benefit of yours, or a differentiation that you don't have to collect a deposit, boy, I hope you have something more than that. So that will screw up your cash flow. And maybe you might be attracting people who don't want to put money down, who may never put any money down, right? So you'd ask, what would I recommend? I would actually recommend half down. And I got to believe many of you are getting half down. It's very interesting. We used to get 1/3 down, my guys, okay? And one day we said, well, if we can get 1/3 down, why wouldn't we get half down? And the whole sales staff was, Steve, you can't do that. People won't put half down. And there was almost a riot. You know what happened 2 weeks later? Everybody was getting half down. Crazy. And then after that, it was never a problem. So we figured, well, if we can get half down, maybe we can get 100% down. So we rewarded the salespeople with a $50 gas card if they could get 100% down. Guess what happened? Some of the salespeople started getting 100% down, meaning payment in advance. Think about that. So if you're having some cash flow issues, get a deposit. You know, I know that's one way I grew my company is with other people's money. I got deposits on work, and sometimes that money was held onto for weeks before we did that work, and then we fulfilled the contract. And many times we'd have to wait weeks to actually get paid on the back end. You guys probably understand that too. Now, if you have a better system where you can collect it at the end, that's even better. So as far as deposits go, get deposits. Let's see here. What do I have here? What's the biggest job you ever sold? That's a good one. $2.5 million was the biggest single roofing job that I sold. And what the most interesting piece on that was, we were told that we didn't have the job. It was a condominium. And guys, for you roofers out there, I'd say you remodelers, landscapers, probably all of you out there, if you're not looking at the condominium world or the multifamily world, I would implore you to really look at that, because there is an amazing amount of money in that business. And it takes one good apartment, condo, multifamily job to really make your entire year. So now the selling of that, it is a little bit different. That's more of a B2B, a business to business sale versus a business to consumer sale, but it's not that much different. So that's something that I definitely advise you to visit. So I think we're just about ready to wrap things up. Guys, it was great spending time with you. So the next thing that will happen is a survey, like I said, will go out. If you'd like to kind of view into these into the future, you know, at the end of the day, if you got one or two nuggets from these, you know, that might be the difference between winning and losing a deal. And you're not going to turn everything right, not going to do everything, but if you did one or two, it might make a big difference. If you want to kind of go a little bit deeper, get you or your salespeople trained a little bit quicker, then certainly reach out to me as well. So guys, thanks for joining us today. Brandon, I'm going to turn it over to you at this point, okay?
Perfect. Thank you very much, Steve. This was extremely helpful. And I just wanted to let everyone know at Hearth that we're here to help your business grow by bringing on people like Steve to show you how you can take financing and other tools and go to the next level. Whether you're a customer or someone interested in Hearth, please don't hesitate to reach out, and we'd be happy to tell you more. So with that, thank you again for joining us, Steve, and we'll look forward to having you back on again soon. I'm just going to give it a couple more seconds here, and then we'll sign off. So yes, thank you very much, everyone.